Let me focus then on some of the issues that were contentious issues in your previous tenure. The Land Acquisition Act, for instance, you were involved with that. The resolution at the end of the plenary says that you will...
It's contentious. I'm sorry. It's contentious. It is contentious only for people who want to acquire land in an arbitrary, discriminatory, dictatorial manner. It's contentious only for them. It's not contentious for the landowners or for the farmers or for the landless. So, the word contentious that you use is a loaded term, If you want to acquire land without paying adequate compensation, if you want to acquire land without the permission of the landowners, yes,
I'll explain why I use that. Because the feedback from industry, and you're well aware of this, is that this is going to increase costs very significantly.
By no more than the land acquisition cost is no more than 3 to 4% of the total cost of a project. This was not my estimate, it was an estimate made by a Kotak Mahindra report in 2009.
The second criticism was that this will delay things significantly, which will lead to time overruns and cost overruns as well.
Cost. We must pay the cost for adequate compensation. We must pay the cost for getting the permission of the landowners. The manner we just decide that we are going to acquire the land. This was what happening for the bullet train project. We just decide. The government just decides. Mr. Modi just decides that we will acquire this land, and that's it. I mean, there is no consultation, there is no participation, there is no permission of the landowners. You're going to throw them out. Land is the only form of livelihood for millions of families. So I'm sorry, I mean, this argument that it's going to add cost and time, of course it's going to add cost and time. But that's what we have to face, because land is something that is owned by a large number of people as a form of social security. They would like to hold on to it. Many landowners would like to give up their land as well. I mean, I'm not saying that, they're going to keep it in perpetuity. But you must do it in a manner that gives them adequate compensation, number one. You must do it in a manner, in a democratic manner. You take their consent.
So why not let states decide? Which is what they're doing at this point in time, because in your plenary document you say that you will not allow states to dilute the original Act of 2013.
By the way, the whole purpose of bringing the legislation is land acquisition is on the concurrent list. And in a concurrent list, if there is a central law and a state law, the central law predominates. The state law cannot... It can add to the central law. It cannot derogate from the central law, which is what states like Gujarat, Telangana, and a couple of states have actually done. Tamil Nadu have actually done that. Rajasthan has also tried to do it. To remove, for example, the social impact assessment, remove some of the provisions of the written permission from the landowners. I think that's very retrograde. I don't think that's in the interest of the country. I mean, just because you want to implement a project immediately, I mean, go through the due diligence, go through the due process. Land has been acquired in an atrocious manner over the last 50, 60 years by governments as well as by private industry. The state of Rajasthan is sitting on 70,000 acres of land. There is no land shortage for industry. Why doesn't RICO, the Rajasthan, I mean, give you an example. It's true in Maharashtra, it's true in Karnataka, it's true in every state. Government agencies
utilize the land banks that the government is sitting on.
Thousands of acres of land they're sitting on. Why don't they part with that land?
I want to talk about agriculture, because that seems to be another focus area that the Congress will go after the government for not delivering on the promises made to the agriculture sector. I mean, this is an area...
Not just not delivering the promise, but wrecking the agricultural sector by not keeping the pace of increase in the MSP. Rural wages have stagnated compared to what they were between 2004 and 2014. I won't say stagnated, the rate of increase has gone down very significantly. And of course, the big jumla of 50% over cost of production. When these
we're still waiting to hear from them on the MSP promise that was announced in the budget,
Well, I forced the finance minister in Parliament to admit that it is 50% over A2 plus FL, not 50% over the comprehensive cost. If it is 50% over A2 and FL, under the UPA government, many crops were getting over 50%. So what is the new thing that the BJP, Mr. Modi is doing?
What do you believe is the need of the hour? I mean, as I said, loan waivers, it was done in 2009 by the UPA. You've promised that in your resolution as well. But that's not going to fix the problem in the agriculture sector. That's the band-aid that you apply every time that there is a problem.
We need a band-aid too.
No, I'm not suggesting that you don't, but I'm suggesting that there needs to be more emphasis now on providing a better deal, a new deal for the agriculture sector. Is that part of the thinking of the Congress, outside of just the loan waivers?
We have to strengthen the foundations of Indian agriculture through investment in irrigation, through investment in infrastructure which goes into agriculture. But these are long-term solutions. In the short run, you have to alleviate farm distress. And how do you alleviate farm distress? MSP is one instrument, wage rates is another instrument, procurement is a third instrument. These are instruments that you have to use. Loan waivers are short-term quick fix solutions which are required under specific circumstances. So, I mean, we can't rule anything out. It's a mix of both the short term as well as the long term.
Let me ask you about what the narrative is likely to be on some of the other issues. For instance, the role of the public sector, whether it's banking, whether it's defense.
The Congress party is a center-left party, okay? It's a center-left party. The Congress party is a party that believes in the public sector. And thank God for that. But it is the Congress party that brought in the private banks. You're raising the issue of banking. Yes. Do we believe in privatization of banks? No. Do we believe in greater private participation in the banking sector? Yes. We are the party that first started the ball rolling for entry of private players into the insurance industry. Do we believe in privatizing LIC? No. Do we believe in privatizing the big ONGCs and the BHALs and the steel authorities? No. Under any circumstances. No. N-O.
So what is the plan then as far as possible strategic disinvestment is concerned? Is that a no?
I mean, these are all, words, strategic. Why don't you come out and say privatize?
Okay, privatization.
We don't believe in privatization of banks. We don't. We will not.
Consolidation?
Private banks will expand. Obviously, we don't want to stop private banks from expanding. Consolidation, maybe. I mean, this notion that we must have 6 banks or 7 banks. Who has come up with this formula? We must have only 6 or 7 banks. So, I mean, these are issues that have to be discussed very seriously. But I can assure you, no Congress government is going to privatize a bank. Congress governments will provide opportunities for private steel industry, for private aluminum industry, for private banks. The private sector will grow. We don't want to stop the private sector from growing. But are we going to take a national asset and going to privatize it? Are we going to privatize the railways? No.
If Air India doesn't go through in the tenure of this government, will you give up on that plan?
Do I want privatization of Air India? I'm myself very ambivalent. I'm myself very ambivalent. It is in a difficult situation. Government should be spending money on education and health and not in bailing out airlines and hotels.
So isn't that a good enough reason then?
Yeah, I mean, but it's ambivalent. I'm not entirely sure that wholesale privatization. I would, for example, one difference between what I would have done and what this government has done, I would have kept 76. I would have given 76. I would have kept 26% with the government. It would have been a 74-26.
Well, it's 24, so...
No, it's 76-24.
Yeah, that's
it's a huge difference. Yeah. 24 and 26 is a huge difference under the Indian Companies Act. If you have 24, you might as well be 0. I mean, this 24 is a charade. It's a complete charade. 26% gives you, a position on the board. We can move a special resolution. You're not completely out of the seat. With 24, you might as well have given up 100. I mean, this 24 is an eyewash, by the way.
Okay.
It's a complete eyewash.
Okay, so you're saying no privatization of banks, N-O, capital N-O. What is the answer then as far as bringing in more efficiency when we talk about running public sector banks? NPAs, I mean, you can...
Why don't you ask the same question of private banks? Why don't you ask the same question of what is happening to this drama in the ICICI Bank?
I'm not suggesting that this is only a private sector or public sector bank issue. I'm talking about the
banking issue. It's a general issue.
No, but there is a larger public sector bank issue. While we're hearing about issues on the private sector side as well today, the problem with public sector banks...
Private sector sector things don't come out, the public sector bank things come out. Look what's happening in the ICICI Bank. Look what's happening in Axis Bank.
Yes, but it is public money that is involved when we talk about
whether
public
it's private or public,
issues.
doesn't matter.
Exactly.
Doesn't matter. I agree.
What is the answer there then to be able to ensure efficiency, transparency, accountability?
Privatization certainly is not the answer. Privatization is certainly not the answer. I mean, I'm very clear in my mind. I mean, on Air India, you know, I'm ambivalent, I told you.
Yeah.
Personally.
Sure.
The party may not be ambivalent. My personal view, I'm ambivalent. Ashoka Hotel, I believe in privatization. You know, I believe in privatization of all these hotels. We don't have no business running hotels and so on.
So where do you believe
but on banks, I draw a line.
Okay.
I draw a line on banks.
Okay.
I don't think that we should be privatizing banks. I think we should be improving the interface that the banks have with the regulatory agencies. I think government should reduce, allow banks to be more board-driven, although the board of ICICI is hardly a model to be followed in the public sector. I think we should have more professionalization and greater autonomy of decision making as far as the banking sector is concerned. I think these are complex issues which have to be dealt with. It's not, should we privatize,
no,
should we not privatize?
I understand. I understand.
You
know, this is not a binary issue. Let me end then by asking you about the crisis that we're seeing in the judiciary today. Whether this is a battle between the executive or a battle within the judiciary or a mix of both. You know, there is opinion that says that the Congress was wrong in moving the impeachment motion against the Chief Justice. We now have no decision being taken by the Collegium yet on what happens with the decision on the Uttarakhand High Court judge's concern and his elevation to the Supreme Court. Do you believe that the impeachment motion was the right approach?
It was an extraordinary situation, required an unprecedented step. Impeachment was an unprecedented step, but the background was extraordinary. And I think it was with a very heavy heart. And it was a sad day, it was a very heavy heart. It was a considered move. It was taken after much discussion. There were pros and there were cons. There were people within the Congress party who were ambivalent. There were people who had reservations. I was deeply ambivalent and I had my own reservations, but I signed the impeachment motion. I have no hesitation in saying that I was in two minds. I weighed the pros and cons, the advantages, the disadvantages, the reasons, the background. I talked to a number of people, to my colleagues. Initially I was reluctant, but ultimately I ended up signing. I was one of the 60-odd members of parliament who signed. I have no hesitation in saying it. But as I said, it was an unprecedented situation. It's an extraordinary step that we took. It shouldn't have, the situation shouldn't have arisen, but it calls for this whole episode over the impeachment points to the fact that you need some institutional mechanism for enforcing judicial accountability, transparency, dealing with such issues within the judicial framework. You know, the Judicial Accountability Commission, for example, has been suggested.
But at this point, do you believe that de-escalation is perhaps best, given the fact that if this...
Well, the government seems to be wanting escalation too. Look at the way they've handled the Uttarakhand Chief Justice issue. I mean, the government is also, it's unfair for you to draw attention only to the impeachment motion.
No, I'm not.
I think the government has also taken on a very confrontational attitude towards the judiciary. So yes, I think the judiciary, there is need to cool down the temperature. There is need to detoxify the debate, the discourse that is taking place. The judiciary should function independently, autonomously, and in a completely apolitical, non-political manner. I think one of the reasons why the impeachment motion had become necessary was not because of the nature of the judicial decision that got taken. After all, the Supreme Court is final. It's not infallible, but it is final. But the reason is that there is a large number of charges that, a large number of questions that had been raised on the Chief Justice's behavior and his actions, which called for, this investigation. But
But the heat of the hour is to cool down.
I think we need to. I think things need to cool down. I think all political parties need to understand that the judiciary, an independent judiciary, is an essential organ of our democratic setup. Is essential, as you know, like the legislature, like the executive, we need the judiciary, and the judiciary also on its own, on itself, must understand that there are questions that are being raised on the manner of the decision making, and I hope wiser counsels will prevail on both sides, you know, and we don't have this attitude of confrontation and suspicion.
So I'll end then by asking you, you talked about the reincarnation of the Congress party, and Karnataka might prove to be the real political rebirth.
Sanjeevani.
The Sanjeevani. You know, what do you believe is the key task for Rahul Gandhi today?
In Karnataka or outside Karnataka?
No, outside of Karnataka. In general, for the Congress party, given the existential crisis that the Congress still continues to deal with.
For 2019, certainly, he has a short-term task of 2019, and he has a longer-term task of rebuilding the Congress party. The longer-term task is to find, you know, faces in each state, build them up, and those whom you project, you must also protect. You know, so you've got to build up you've got to build the next generation of Amrinder Singhs, the next generation of Siddharamayas, you know, the next generation of Gehlots. I mean, we've got to keep, organization has to keep renewing itself generationally. That's a big longer-term challenge. But in 2019, the immediate challenge is to sew up intelligent alliances, you know, on alliances based on programs, based on commonality of interest. And make sure that the Modi government doesn't come back to power. That's a short-term objective, but there's also this longer-term objective of organizational renewal, and both have to go hand in hand. I mean, you know, they're not sequential.
Sure.
Both have to go hand in hand.
Jairam Ramesh, it's always a pleasure. Thanks very much for joining us here on CNBC TV 18 with your thoughts on the revival, rejuvenation and road ahead for the Congress party. With that, it is time for us to wrap up this CNBC TV 18 special from all of us here on the Political Exchange. Thanks very much for watching.